So hold on. Just waiting for Cat to settle. Sit there. Sit there. Right. Hi everyone, Steve Wiss here. I'm joined as ever by Kevin Harper, and this is the latest edition of our football betting podcasts. This time discussing all the relevant Monday fixtures, and we are going to start with the big one in the Premier League, Monday Night Football. Burnley against Newcastle, and well, as far as the bookmakers are concerned, this should be quite an even affair, Kev. Not a lot separates either team in terms of odds here. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the big one in the Premier League, Steve, but it is the only game in the Premier League, you're right. I read this exactly the same way as I read the Brighton-Southampton game on Sunday. Maybe that would be a little bit harsh on the two attacks. I think they're a bit better than the Brighton and the Southampton attacks, but certainly the defensively minded sides, maybe not defensively minded, but defensively organised sides there, let's put it that way. I would say Burnley are defensively minded. Generally, when you're coached by a defender, your sides tend to be that way, and that's obviously the case with Burnley and Sean Dyche. And I think Benitez is more organised as defensively than, kind of gun-ho in attack. So I don't really expect too much in the way of free-flowing football here. Obviously, Burnley have got a doubt over Chris Wood. He did himself a favour and went off injured in the game against Man City last week, and he's a doubt for this one. Sam Vokes is also a doubt, so Burnley are going to have to rely on their defence, maybe even nick a goal at set pieces if they're going to score at all. And they might have Nahki Wells available, but he's hit and miss by all accounts. Newcastle, they never really convinced me on their travels. I didn't think they were particularly great against Southampton the other week. Southampton were terrible, certainly defensively. And going back a little bit further than that, Newcastle were really poor at Brighton. So as much as I like my Monday night games to have goals in it, I just don't see there being too many in this one. 2 at the most, probably even 1, if there's even that many. So under 2.25.
Yeah, I have to say I looked at this fixture and it was one of those that just stuck out to me as maybe it's worth a punt on no goal scorer here. I'm not exactly sure what the odds are. I can't believe they'll be particularly great, but it could be a 0-0 or a low scorer where an own goal gets something. Both teams are, well, some of the strongest undersides in the division. Burnley, 7 of their 9 fixtures have ended under 2.5 this year. And the 2 that actually went over were against Chelsea and Man City. And you can kind of excuse them for that, can't you? So I can definitely see where you're coming from in terms of the under here. Just before we move on, match result itself, if you had to put your money on one of the teams to actually win it, who would it be?
Probably Burnley. I'm not convinced by Newcastle away from home. Think back to last season, but back in Burnley to win their home games was a pretty profitable strategy. They've not started off this season quite as well at Turf Moor, but I think if either side win this game, it'll be them.
Yeah, it looks like it should be a tight one. Let's hope it is. Under 2.25 goals, 1.83 there for the one Premier League match bet on Monday Night Football.
Absolutely, yeah. There's also one game in League 2 in France. It sees Châteauroux in action against Lens. 2 sides down at the wrong end of the table, I think it's fair to say. But you're with the home side.
Yeah, well, Lens are in the bottom 3, but I would actually say they're one of the top 5 or 6 best sides in the division, just the way things have been going for them. A freak start to the season where they lost their first 7. So they're in a false position, and they've shown recent signs of recovery. They won their last away match 6-0, of an incredible result against Bourg-en-Bresse. But yeah, I do fancy Châteauroux here. They've been pretty good at home this year. There's going to be a bumper crowd in place. What you got to remember with Lens are the biggest team in this division, really, by quite a long way in terms of fan support. They really belong in Liga. Massive club, should be doing a lot better. They take an awful lot of away fans with them, and it's like a cup final. Every single time they go away from home, it's a cup final for the opposition, with the exception maybe of someone like Lorient or a team like Reims, perhaps. So a massive game for Châteauroux. I would expect them to raise their game here. But there's also an interesting situation. Lens goalkeeper Nicolas Duchesne, He's been involved in a bizarre off-the-field incident recently, which prevents him taking part in this match. He was arrested a couple of nights ago for a domestic incident. Apparently, officers were called to his partner's flat, and a source apparently told the local news that he slaughtered his girlfriend, he grabbed her by the hair, and he hit her head against the wall. So a bit of a bloody scene. Apparently, blood was found on the walls and floor, everything. Of course, Duches has come back and denied all of this to a certain degree, but I just can't believe when that sort of thing happens within a squad, it's going to affect people. Would you not say, Kev?
Yeah, I would imagine it would actually. Yeah, can't be particularly good for team morale. It makes the Salford goalkeeper's exploits at the weekend look minuscule, really, doesn't it?
It does. The thing about Duches, he actually started the season in the reserves because he fell out with the manager. So he's a bit of a fiery character, this bloke. But when he came back in the team, the last 5 games, they've only conceded 2 goals with 3 clean sheets. He gives them a big authoritative influence in between the sticks. I think he'll be missed in this game. The backup goalkeeper will either be Jeremy Vacu or Valentin Bellon. And neither are particularly bad, but Duches is a much better keeper than all of those. So all things considered, I like Châteauroux plus a quarter here. I think they can avoid defeat. Whether or not they're going to win the match, I don't know, but I just think they're going to rise to the occasion. And one final factor, their best player, Razak Bukhari, who's actually only played 3 minutes of action all season, was a former Lens player. He played for Lens 4 or 5 years, made his name there, really. It's just this sort of thing always happens. I could see him putting in a good performance, scoring a goal on his return from injury, and making the headlines. So, yeah, Châteauroux plus a quarter, Kev.
Yeah, always partial to a home side on a plus handicap, I must admit. Does look a good one, Matt. Let's head across to Norway, where you had 2 winners on Sunday. Very well done with those. One more match left in this round of fixtures. Sees 2 more sides at the wrong end of their tables, really, in action as Lillestrøm host Aalesund. And once again, it's the home side that interests you.
Yeah, this looks like a home win to me, Kev. Aalesund have not won a match since mid-June. They're in a real mess. They should have sacked their coach about 6 or 7 games ago, really. But they didn't do it, and they paid the price for this because it just looked... I think with Aalesund, on paper, they've got the talent that should be mid-table and comfortably mid-table. They've had no injuries, very few suspensions, and, they've not even been unlucky in matches. They deserved their poor results. So when that happens to a squad that should be comfortably mid-table, you've got to ask the question, what has been going wrong? And there's only one possible answer. It's the coach, isn't it? Can't be another reason because they've got the talent available to them to be doing much better. So he's a sinking ship. They tried to bring in another manager this week. It didn't happen. He refused the job. And why wouldn't you? Because the last 3 games after this are against Rosenborg, Sarpsborg and Strømsgodset. So if Aalesund survive, I'll eat my hat. I really will. This is their last really good chance to get 3 points. But they're not even going to get 1 here. I think Lillestrøm are the better team. Solid outfit, and if they win the game, they're going to confirm their safety. So, yeah, I think just because Arsenal are so bad at the moment, you've got to keep going against them. They really are a poor team in terms of how they're playing on the field. I just don't see how anyone can turn it around, especially as it seems that the coach has lost the dressing room, but they haven't dismissed the coach.
Yeah, it does sound like a good opportunity for yet another home win after the 3 that came in on Sunday. 2 decent bets there then in France and in Norway. We'll finish the podcast off with the continuation of the MLS playoffs. Obviously, they began on Sunday night with Vancouver against Seattle, and they continue on Monday as the Toronto FC, the Supporters Shield winning Toronto FC, make their way to the Big Apple to take on the New York Red Bulls. Red Bulls surprisingly made it past Chicago Fire. Are they going to continue their momentum?
It's a really interesting game, this one, isn't it? Because like the boot's on the other foot for once. Usually it's the Red Bulls who've won the Eastern Conference, maybe even won the Supporters Shield. But on this occasion, it's Toronto. So, yeah, maybe for once it might work out for the Red Bulls that they don't enter the postseason as one of the top favourites. But just looking at Toronto FC, they're the best team left in this competition by a country mile now. In my opinion, they've got it too. They've really been lucky that Atlanta are knocked out. I think they were the only team that could realistically beat them. certainly over 2 legs anyway. There's too much quality in the TFC lineup. Like Giovinco, Altidore, they're going to cause havoc to the Red Bulls' defence. The only chance the New York Red Bulls have got is to attack in this game. They've got to outscore them over the 2 legs, which they could maybe do. They've shown glimpses of that this season. I just think this will be a wide open game. Neither team really likes to play defensively. I think Toronto can play defensively if they want to, but we saw last season in the playoffs they never ever shut up shop, did they, in any match? And I think they'll keep to that strategy, which really got them close to winning the MLS Cup. So I mean, I would be in the court of the overs, and I know you like plenty of goals here as well, don't you, Kev?
Yeah, certainly do. These two met in Toronto earlier in the month, didn't they? Toronto won that game 4-2. A bit of an end-to-end cracking game of football. 2 of their 3 matches last year went over. Well, the line's 2.75, isn't it? But it went over that, and it was 1-1 when they met earlier on in the season. You'd have to kind of quantify that 1-1 draw in May by saying the Red Bulls hadn't got going at all. Then it wasn't really until sort of June, July, the sort of time that the Gold Cup came around, that they really got going this season, wasn't it? So even then, that 1-1 probably may equate into more goals where it played the other side of the Gold Cup. So generally, when these two meet, goals flow. And yeah, like you say, the way the Red Bulls have to approach this, I think the goals are going to flow again. To be fair, I mean, we saw a couple of times last season, didn't we? Toronto are quite capable of going away from home in the playoffs and covering these kind of lines on their own. So, you know, we shouldn't necessarily worry if the Red Bulls are outclassed here. If they are outclassed, those front two of Toronto could go absolutely crazy. And if they can give themselves an easier second leg, I'm sure they'll relish the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I think we're both firmly behind the over 2.7 pick in that match. New York Red Bulls against Toronto FC. Later on in the night, Houston Dynamo take on Portland Timbers. I'll let you have first dibs on this one, Kev. How do you see this going?
Yeah, of the 4 ties, it's the tie that I'm actually looking forward to the most. I say that because watching Houston home games are really good things to watch, because they're a weird breed in that they invite the opposition onto them, even at home, just so that they can counter-attack through the likes of Torres, Quioto, and Elias, and those kind of people. And the Timbers won't need no second introduction to attack them, will they? You know, the likes of Valeri, Blanco, Guzman, Nagby, etc., etc. They love to play on the front foot and go forward. So I really think that these two are going to combine for a really nice tie here. You look at their 2 meetings already this season: 4-2 in Portland, 2-2 in Houston. Right the way through their history, their 2 games last season, 3-2, 3-1. 3 games the season before, 3-1, 2-2. You know, there are goals, and that doesn't surprise me, because of, as I say, it's just the way that the 2 sides line up. You know, it's almost like if you asked Houston for an ideal opponent in terms of the way that they'd like to counterattack, Portland would be it. And if you asked Portland the ideal opponent that they'd like to play in terms of getting on the front foot and playing, Houston would be it. So I fully expect these two to gel nicely again. They say styles make fights, don't they? Well, styles also make football matches. You've used a phrase on this podcast many a time in the past that it takes 2 to tango, and they'll both certainly be dancing in this one.
Yeah, I looked at the head-to-head here, and I must say I was quite startled by it. The amount of goals that these 2 teams have been involved in the past. It's not just 2-1s. There's ridiculous scoring matches. And, yeah, it is the natural style of both teams to go for it. I mean, the other night, it was obviously a 0-0 draw inside 90 minutes for Houston against Sporting Kansas City, which was unusual. I would personally put that down to Sporting Kansas City being terrible in front of goal. I thought SKC probably had the better of that game, Kev, actually. But yet again, the finishing let them down. Are you worried that the extra time could have an effect on Houston here, drain them a bit?
Yeah, it might have done, but, you know, if it has done, then Portland will just, you know, have it their own way even more. I just think the way that Houston play it's not likely to have taken too much out of them. It's not like they were charging like a bat out of hell for the entire 2 hours. They were, like you say, they were camped in their own half of the first 45 minutes. It was only really extra time that they kind of put Kansas City to the sword, wasn't it? So, yeah, possibly, but it's as concerns go, it's a minor one, really.
You're taking over 2.5 here. I'm going to be even bolder and take over 2.75. I just think there's going to be at least 3, probably more goals. It should. Yeah, I agree with you. It's probably the most exciting looking contest of all 4 of them. I mean, all 4 matches are pretty exciting, I must say, but this one could literally explode into absolutely anything. It'd be nice to see Fernando Adi on the field for Portland, but I've heard yet again he looks like he's going to miss out. 3 months injured now with a hamstring problem. They're really protecting him. Maybe just want to save him for later in the playoffs potentially. But
I don't necessarily mind that though, Steve. I've got to be honest. I mean, you look at the Houston game. If they play Felipe Senderos again, whoever plays through the middle for Portland, be it Matic, Asprilla, or whoever it may be, they're going to gallop past him, aren't they? So that might not be the worst thing in the world to keep resting Addy. Maybe with the intentions of bringing him into a conference final, should indeed they get there.
Matic has even been scoring goals recently, isn't it? That's got to be worrying for any opposition. He's usually absolutely terrible, isn't he? But I mean, he got a big goal last week. That's going to boost his confidence. So goals in this game, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
Brilliant. So, thanks for your thoughts on all the matches on Monday. Let's hope we can have plenty of winners there. We've had a fairly successful weekend overall. And we'll catch you all again whenever we're on. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be, Kev, but it'll be sooner rather than later. So, take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Cheerio.